Maria Tam says it's highly likely the Hong Kong national security law will be passed by the end of the month. The U.S. Senate passes the Hong Kong Autonomy Act. And Donald Trump takes his re-election campaign to Wisconsin.
Hello and a very good evening. One more top advisor to Beijing on the basic law says it's highly likely the National People's Congress Standing Committee will pass a national security law for Hong Kong by the end of this month. Maria Tam, a vice chairperson of the Basic Law Committee, thinks the new law will effectively stop the violence that the city has witnessed over the past year.
Meanwhile, the pro-democracy camp says the proposed legislation will harm Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy. Dong Yao has more.
The National People's Congress Standing Committee will hold a 3-day meeting in Beijing starting this coming Sunday. Maria Tam, a vice chairperson of the Basic Law Committee who will also attend the meeting, said it's highly likely the proposed national security law will be passed by the end of the month. She noted that this time around, more delegates from the SAR have been invited to sit in the session than previous years. She said the new law will be listed in Annex 3 to the Basic Law and promulgated by the SAR government at a suitable time, pending discussion between mainland and Hong Kong authorities. Tam has defended the proposed law, saying it will effectively curb violence in Hong Kong and minimize the 4 types of crimes the legislation targets. She also assured people that the law will clarify under what specific circumstances the central authorities will step in and exercise its sovereignty over an extremely small minority of criminal acts. Despite the reassurance, pan-democratic lawmakers remain adamant in their opposition to the proposed law.
We cannot see how it could ever strike a balance as far as our common law system in Hong Kong is concerned.
They also called on Beijing to disclose details of the legislation as soon as possible. Dong Yao, TVB News.
Meanwhile, the Hong Kong News Executives Association is urging the National People's Congress Standing Committee to make public details of the draft national security law before passing it. The group has written to the city's sole member of the Standing Committee, Tam Yu Chung, to reflect the opinion. It added this will enable more sectors to express their views and facilitate journalists in analysing the issue and in their reporting work. The US Senate has passed a bill to sanction those violating the Sino-British Joint Declaration and the Basic Law, which guarantee Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy from the mainland.
And the US State Department has downgraded Hong Kong on its human trafficking watch list. Haley Zhou reports.
U.S. politicians are escalating pressure on Beijing as the national security law looms. Passed in the Senate, the Hong Kong Autonomy Act includes mandatory sanctions on people and companies that back efforts by China in restricting Hong Kong's autonomy.
Beijing must know that its actions have consequences. This resolution today makes clear that that will be the case, and that is why so many in Hong Kong are so eager to see it pass, and why Beijing is so hopeful that it will fail.
It also targets police units that have cracked down on Hong Kong protesters as well as officials involved in imposing national security laws on the city. Now the measure goes to the House of Representatives and must also be approved by the president for it to become law. Pan-Democrats here say this bill will help protect the basic freedoms promised to Hong Kongers.
This will have a good basis that the Chinese government would think twice before they will engage in any act which will be seen by the whole world as infringing the Dawn Declaration.
On another front, the U.S. State Department downgraded Hong Kong in its human trafficking ranking system. Now Hong Kong is on the Tier 2 watch list, only half a step above the lowest ranking. The department's latest report on human trafficking points to a drop in the number of identified trafficking victims. It also accused some employment agencies in Hong Kong of being complicit in labor trafficking by charging foreign domestic workers recruitment fees beyond legal limits. The report urged the Hong Kong government to enhance laws regulating these agencies. The Hong Kong government issued a statement calling the downgrading grossly unfair and biased. It said the small number of identified victims showed human trafficking is not widespread in Hong Kong. Macau was also dropped to the same level as Hong Kong. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Meanwhile, the United Nations former human rights chief and 8 former UN special envoys urged the Secretary General to appoint a special envoy on Hong Kong because of the national security law. They say they are deeply concerned about a potential humanitarian tragedy as Beijing prepares to impose the legislation on the city. Zeid Ra'ad Al Hussein, who was the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights between 2014 and 2018, and the 8 former special rapporteurs call for the unusual procedure because of the severity of the deterioration. Comes as a former British Foreign Secretary called on the UK to do more to help Hong Kong.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has rejected a call to swap Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou for 2 Canadians being held in China. Meng is being held in Canada over a U.S. extradition request, while the 2 Canadian men are detained on spying charges. Trudeau says a swap deal would set a terrible precedent.
If countries around the world, including China, realize that by arbitrarily arresting random Canadians, they can get what they want out of Canada politically, well, that makes an awful lot more Canadians who travel around the world vulnerable to that kind of pressure.
Also in North America, US President Donald Trump has been hitting the campaign trail, trying to drum up support for his re-election by painting a rosy picture of a reviving economy. This comes as many US states are fighting off soaring COVID-19 cases after lockdowns have been lifted. Leslie Tang has more.
As the U.S. grapples with spikes in COVID-19 cases, its president is focused on getting the crowds out. Ramping up his re-election campaign, U.S. President Donald Trump addressed hundreds of people in a shipyard in the battleground state of Wisconsin. He talked up a contract won by Fincantieri Marinette Marine to build Navy warships, claiming it will create about 15,000 new jobs through the Wisconsin supply chain. But in reality, things aren't looking so great. Texas reported more than 11,000 new cases in the past 2 days alone. It was one of the states which was moving through an aggressive reopening plan, which the governor has now hit the brakes on. Elective surgeries have also been halted to free up hospital space. Over in Arizona, its governor appealed to residents to wear face masks.
These numbers speak for themselves. 63,030 total COVID-19 cases in Arizona. We are averaging 2,750 cases per day. And we have lost 1,490 Arizonans. Now, at the last press conference, I said that our numbers were going in the wrong direction, and they continue to go in the wrong direction. The rate of the spread of this virus is unacceptable, and it's time for us to step up our actions and our personal responsibilities regarding this virus.
Meanwhile, in New York, the city entered the second phase of easing virus restrictions by allowing outdoor seating at restaurants. Owners have been handed strict guidelines and can apply online for outside dining permits. Leslie Tang, TVB News.
And so ahead on tonight's news, calls on the government to provide foreign domestic helpers with quarantine facilities upon their arrival in Hong Kong. Anton Chan steps back from politics and public life.
Well, welcome back to TVB News. Some 12,000 domestic helpers are expected to arrive in Hong Kong in the summer months. Lawmakers and an employers group are asking the government to provide the helpers with quarantine facilities upon their arrival in the city.
As Naomi Haralela reports, Hong Kong has received 8 imported COVID-19 cases from the Philippines so far this month.
The Immigration Department approved around 3,200 applications for foreign domestic helpers last month, with 60% of them being Filipinos. Currently, Hong Kong's borders are only open to local residents. Those with a work visa can get in, but they have to undergo 2 weeks of compulsory quarantine. Many employers are concerned.
In the Philippines, the COVID-19 actually is growing. The number is growing. So employers would like to have difficulty too. They have worries too, because if they have infected, they got this infection, and they will bring this disease to their family, where they have a old age mother or babies.
Currently, employers are responsible for their maids' quarantine requirements. Lawmakers and employers group think the government should step in.
Their homes may not be a good place to do the quarantine because they don't have separate toilets, or the maids won't have their own rooms. So they urge the government to sponsor them, whether they can consider hotels will be a better place for them to do the quarantine.
Let them stay in the Chunyuan Estate, the quarantine center, because employers believe that government can do better. Especially, they can monitor whether the FDH are staying in this center or whether they have gone out.
The association advises employers to educate domestic helpers on personal hygiene and to provide them with sufficient masks and hand sanitizers for their outings. Naomi Haralela, TVB News.
Well, the city reported 3 imported COVID-19 cases today, mostly returnees from Pakistan. Meanwhile, 1 new case in Macau has broken the enclave's virus-free streak since April the 8th, bringing its tally to 46. The latest patient is a 57-year-old Filipino male resident of Macau. He tested positive after taking a ferry from Hong Kong following his flight from Manila. In response to that, travellers from 6 countries, including India and the Philippines, must show they tested negative to the virus before entering Macau.
The government unveiled more details of the land sale program for the next quarter. It saw a record low in the number of residential plots offered for sale since the program's resumption. Jacqueline has more.
There will only be 2 residential sites up for grabs in the land sales program for July to September. Located in Sai Kung and Tai Po, these sites are expected to provide 160 flats, the lowest number in nearly a decade. Meeting the press, the development chief denied there was a meager land supply for the quarter, citing the upcoming land sales from the MTR Corporation at Cheung Kwan O's Lotus Park. That will add more than 2,500 units in the market. For commercial plots, 2 other sites are up for auction. One is at a prime location along the central waterfront. Another is in Tung Chung East. The development chief hopes the new supply could help boost Hong Kong's pandemic-hit economy.
Land sale does not only generate revenue for the government, it is also important in generating economic activities. So that's why in the past we said we do not hoard. We will put up the relevant sites for sale as and when they are ready. So that continues to be our main philosophy.
In tendering the plots, the government will use the 2-envelope approach. That means tenderers' design proposals and bidding prices will be considered separately with equal weighting. So the plot might not go to the highest bidder. Responding to criticism about this new approach, Wang says they will look into the possibility about releasing the design proposals upon bidding. Jacqueline, TVB News.
Police have rejected applications to hold protest rallies this coming Sunday and on July the 1st. Eastern District Councillor Andy Choi applied to hold marches from Causeway Bay to Chater Garden in Central. Police rejected both applications, saying they do not comply with exemption requirements under social distancing rules.
Former Chief Secretary for Administration Anson Chan is stepping back from politics and public life. The 80-year-old said she wants to spend more time with her family as she grieves the recent loss of her daughter.
Anson Chan, a name familiar to most Hong Kongers. She joined the government in 1962 and was named the first female chief secretary in 1993. As the city returned to Chinese rule 4 years later, Chan was appointed to the same post. After her retirement in 2001, she explained she quit the job because of the administration led by then Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa. Out of the political spotlight, she devoted much of her time advocating for democracy. Chan was a powerful presence at rallies, calling for universal suffrage, and served a few months as a member of the Legislative Council after winning LegCo's by-election in 2007. Foreign media called her Hong Kong's Iron Lady, but also Hong Kong's conscience. Last year, she and a few pan-Democrats met with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi.
She's always super smart, funny, approached every task with humility and great wisdom. And she truly is an honorable person.
The 80-year-old said she had promised her late daughter that she'd retire by now. Today, she urged young people not to lose hope and to protect the city's core values lawfully and peacefully.
A British military plane used by the Prime Minister and royal family made its first appearance since a £900,000 paint job, which saw it redecorated with the colours of the UK flag. RAF Voyager, previously a military grey, took off from Cambridge City Airport, now white with United Kingdom written in gold above the wings and the Union flag sprayed on the tail. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's office says the resprayed jet will improve the country's national branding around the world. Downing Street also defended the expense, which has been criticised by many who think the money could have been better spent. That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.